I think, in the long term, users are going to have tons of wallets, maybe even hundreds, maybe even one wallet per application. And managing that is going to be a nightmare. So we need to build the right tooling to be able to have funds on different chains. There might be, application specific chains or even application specific wallets. So yeah, making sure that you have all of your finances in crypto under one place is very important. And that's what we want to build for. We're not taking a bet saying centralized exchanges are going away, in the next few years. We're saying if you want to use a centralized exchange, come to Caddi. We'll allow you to trade on Binance, Kraken, KuCoin, whatever you want. But then also, if you wanted to trade on Uniswap, if you wanted to trade on many different blockchains, you can come to us and we'll have an aggregated view. Will allow you to frictionlessly move funds around and manage everything from one place.
Welcome to the Deus Ex Dao podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Deus Ex Dao podcast. My name is rture, and today I'm joined by Jaimin from Caddi. And we live in a quite widespread crypto landscape where we have centralized exchanges, decentralized exchanges. We have funds living across multiple chains. I think there are more than 30 or 40 chains that are actively being used right now. And users are trying to find their way with all their funds and how they do swaps best. And I think that's central to this podcast and the Caddi product. But before we dig in, thank you, Jaimin, for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your background is, how you basically entered the crypto space?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me first. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys do in the space. A little bit of background on myself. Well, I love building things to start. Yeah, I'm a relentless builder. Started out with coding, and my introduction to crypto came in 2017, where I set up a blockchain society where I was studying. And that was, definitely in the bull run. I wanted to find out more, so read a few books. I got involved with research, actually not in the crypto space. So during the bear market, I wish I paid more attention. I was looking at social media misinformation and also decentralized robotics. I then forayed into traditional finance through getting a quant role at Citibank. And then I'd also been building equities trading infrastructure for a startup. So I got hands-on with trading, set up some algorithms. And in 2021, I went fully into the crypto space. Left my quant job because I was trading. And, to be honest, it was working quite well. So I set up some algorithms, and this is probably, the most coding that you could possibly do for a year straight. Very few meetings. It was just working on algorithms to execute off social media signals. So I was scraping, using my background. I had a lot of familiar with Twitter's APIs, with web scraping. I was able to look at sentiment and also low latency signals to trading and trying to profit off movements in the market caused by events. Eventually, I wanted to dive deeper into DeFi. I was trading at that time on centralized exchanges. So I started getting very excited about what people were building, really innovating from 0 to 1, kind of putting out products that I hadn't seen like that in traditional finance or anywhere beyond. And I actually did a few hackathons. They were great learning experiences. I met a ton of people in the community. And then at some point when the markets changed around 2022, I realized that I'd built a multitude of tools. That was to manage my portfolio. It was getting really messy. The deeper that you get into crypto, the more fragmented your assets become. And that's kind of by design. People want to fragment their funds. It offers a ton of benefits. You don't have a single point of failure. So if one hack is not going to take your entire portfolio out, and then you also have different opportunities you can capture on the various chains and exchanges you're set up with as well. I did have a go at arbitrage trading on CeFi and DeFi. And then I wanted to make all these tools public and really build for what I knew would be millions of users who would want similar tools. And that was the formation of Caddi. It started out being quite different to what it looks like now, but it was just making what I'd executed with public and seeing if there was engagement there.
That's awesome, because I think you're building from your own tooling, you've built gradually, you've seen some of these typical problems a highly engaged user of the crypto space would typically use, and are now moving to like a product that's more accessible. But let's dig a little bit deeper into the current problem when you're working like both with centralized exchanges, but also with the on-chain exchanges and infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, there's just so many exchanges to choose from, right? There's probably over 500 different exchanges which are actively used. Obviously, geography dependent on the centralized side, but the number of DEXs is pretty staggering in DeFi, and there's tons of different chains. So, how do you, as a retail trader or any trader, know if you're getting the best price for any swap? That's a really hard problem to navigate, and of course, everyone wants the best price for every swap they do. So, navigating that space, you actually have to build quite custom tooling. You have to check where your liquidity starts. You also have to check, what the prices are. They can change in an instant. And actually managing a portfolio across both CeFi and DeFi is incredibly complicated. It's so time consuming. So, there's a lot of things you have to navigate. Can you move funds around in time to capture different opportunities? Do you even have funds in the right place to access a token that is listed on an exchange you don't have? Or is only trading on, let's say, BNB chain when you have something on Ethereum? So navigating this is an incredibly complex process.
Yeah, and that's like coming from your perspective as an experienced quant doing arbitrage trades. Like imagine that for the simple user or like the general user actually in crypto. And that's also my experience. Like it takes probably hours every month to just know where funds are, where I have to move funds from one chain to another or through a centralized exchange. If I want to enter a trade, I have to check that liquidity on the exchange, and all interfaces are different. Basically, I think if you can somewhat get a unified interface for that, it solves that problem. And that brings us basically to what you're building with Caddi. And could you explain what Caddi is doing for a user and how that looks when solving this problem?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, kind of first going over those problems. So fragmented liquidity is very hard to manage. Getting the best price is really hard. A lot of people go to what's familiar to them. I think crypto users have very sticky behaviors. For example, 45% of the trading volume on Uniswap actually comes through the Uniswap UI, whether there are better actual places to execute. There's 1inch. It's a kind of DEX aggregator, probably the most popular one. Around 50% of the aggregator volume comes through them. DeFi Llama have their meta aggregator, and they all have quite different UIs. So, you're actually wasting money if you're trading on Uniswap because you're not taking advantage of some of these market inefficiencies. We predicted that 2.2 billion was wasted in non-optimal trades. And the other thing is, familiarity is quite important because of scams. They happen to retail traders quite a lot. You don't know when you could be buying a rug pull token, being on a phishing website. And how Caddi actually addresses this is we route through CeFi and DeFi to make sure that every single trade is optimal. We've produced a Chrome extension that's live on Brave and Chrome. And what it will do is sit in between the dApps and wallets. So say you're a trader and you typically trade on Uniswap. Then when you execute a transaction, Caddi will then look at the price that you're getting. So say you're swapping some Ethereum to Curve tokens. We'll say, what is the price you're getting? Can we find a better price in the ecosystem? Whether you have a Binance account, whether you want to use different liquidity from aggregators, we'll aggregate the aggregators. It seems to be a popular theme now, but all built inside this extension, which is very similar to the UX of Honey. If you've ever used the coupon code, it will get you discounts through a Chrome extension. We actually just want to use that experience and bring it to crypto traders. The second thing we do is scam prevention. So every single time you execute a transaction through Caddi, it's vetted for security to make sure you're not falling for a rug pull, to make sure there's no scams that you're falling to and you're not giving a hacker access to your funds. And really in doing this, to bring about a level of confidence which you otherwise wouldn't have when you're swapping. And also, as you mentioned, unifying that UI, making sure that wherever you are, whatever your favorite app is, say you're trading on 1inch or your DeFi Llamas meta aggregator, you have access to the absolute best liquidity in crypto.
That's, I think, a good solution. I've played around with Caddi in the last week. For some people, it might feel a little bit weird that there's something in between your crypto wallet that's also a wallet extension or something on their desktop. But it's quite seamless because you put in a trade and it just gives you an extra check. And that extra check is actually what I've seen in a lot of these protective tooling to check if it's really a valid transaction. But I think the great thing is also that you are adding that aggregator functionality on top. Like, hey, are you also getting the most value for your money here for that trade? Which is great, which is an awesome improvement. I want to talk a little bit about that stickiness of the users, because I actually was such a Uniswap user. I knew about like something like 1inch, but still kept using Uniswap. And I think part of that is that maybe it's that familiarity and also just a habit. Trying to break those habits is hard. But for example, if I looked up a coin on CoinGecko and then wanted to trade it, then there's always that Uniswap interface there, like first as an exchange. And then I would have to switch to something like 1inch or another aggregator. And I think that's one of the good things here. What I had with Caddi, like, I can still use Uniswap as an interface to just put in the data or like the amounts for the trade, and then it interrupts me like, hey, what are you doing? Like you're better off with the trade we're suggesting, and then it shows like the routing it does. So it's quite transparent in that. So that's been my experience with the tool. But like if somebody wants to start themselves with Caddi, like how can they start adding this to their browser basically, and what browsers are supported and what wallets can they use Caddi with?
Yeah. So I mean, the ultimate goal of Caddi is independent of whatever solutions you use. So whatever wallets that you use, obviously the most popular one, if we're talking about stickiness here, MetaMask has done so well. They have over 40 million users, and that's where we're starting, right? MetaMask, Google Chrome, and Brave. So the browsers, we will extend to Firefox. Quite an interesting insight that we've gathered from our users is a lot of crypto people like Firefox. I don't know whether it's like kind of the Android philosophy for tech people. It is a bit more customizable, but it seems to be a really popular browser. And then, there's all sorts of browsers which are being produced now, some even crypto native ones. But, independent of the apps you're using, the dApps and the wallets, we do want to support absolutely all of them. But I do think, giving the user an opportunity to choose any wallet, like we might have our own wallet in the future, a Caddi wallet. But if they want to use MetaMask, they're just familiar with it, they trust it, because trust is honestly the hardest game to solve in crypto. They can still store all of their funds there. So it's worth mentioning that, in Caddi, we don't have any funds. We never keep it, not even non-custodially. It's just stored in your wallet solutions that you already have. And then we'll just route the trades from there. But yeah, just starting out with, the basics. We're on a wait list currently. We should be coming off the wait list this quarter, and very excited. We're just testing with early beta users right now. We've got them giving a lot of feedback to make sure that the actual process is very polished and we're ready to launch live.
Yeah, you need to start somewhere, right? Like, and I think if you cover Firefox, Chrome with a MetaMask extension, you already have a big potential user group you can tap into. And I actually, it works also with the Frame wallet. Because it acts a little bit as the as MetaMask, so that doesn't matter if you're using Frame. It works well too. And there's like all these different toolings. Like one of my critiques on the current like DeFi space is So I feel that a lot of the UI UX isn't really fit for like the broader adoption in the world. But you as a builder, like both working on a UI UX problem, but also on a tech problem with all the aggregations. Which of these is according to you the biggest problem bugging crypto right now?
Yeah, so I mean, this is another take. I actually don't think it's either UX or tech right now. I certainly see UX as being something which can help onboard millions, if not billions, more users. But it's actually security and trust right now. We've kind of gone through 2022 where we've seen numerous platforms blow up. I think crypto is often laughed out the room, and we really need to regain that trust with the wider audience, but also the crypto audience as well. When we've seen hacks like Euler Finance got hacked for 100 million plus, there is the fact that we don't really bat an eyelid and we carry on about our day when stuff like that goes on. We really need to solve the security and trust issues before we can worry too much about UX. That being said, I think for us and our perspective, we are concentrated mostly on UX, but also, I think it's the next layer. When a user right now is kind of interlinked, they have to create a seed phrase with MetaMask and then store that somewhere. That is a UX, and that's also a security issue as well. So I'd recommend to a lot of users who are onboarding, if they're not willing to put in the time and effort, someone like, my dad was interested in buying crypto. I told him, just go on Coinbase and save yourself the trouble of having to do self-custody. I would be happy to onboard you, but I know you're busy. I know you're not going to take, things as seriously or be as exploratory if you just want to buy some tokens. So, I actually think that UX is a big problem, but also security too. We look at all these DeFi protocols being hacked, but it's not only just security itself, it's the perception of security. The fact that crypto has come from having a bad name to being somewhat more widely accepted now is an important step in the future. And then obviously making sure the technology works. So it's robust. We've seen DeFi actually stand up incredibly well against a lot of market conditions. Obviously, there are different protocols which have been hacked or have failed mechanism-wise, some quite spectacularly. But I think, once we have those and those issues solved, we can then bring on a better UX onboarding to navigating the ecosystem. We talk to a lot of users and they lose track of their funds all the time. They're not sure, what's going on. They're actually just nervous to connect their wallet to any website. These are all UX barriers, but they're also security problems as well. In terms of the routing, we're solving a lot of pretty hard problems on making sure users get the best price, given it is a very fragmented space. There's a lot of incentives for builders to come on and then start building something completely new, which you then have to build a plug into that ecosystem, a bridge, make sure that's all sorted out. We also have a lot of early adopters now. I think, the people who are in crypto, a lot of them are experimenters of new tech. And that's the way they've come in. They're willing to deal with somewhat buggy products, things that, if you lose your funds, it's like, oh, okay, I've seen that happen before. That's just happened in a different way now. But really, once we reach some sort of equilibrium, we need to have all these issues solved. And that's when UX will really take us to the next level.
Good points, especially on security. But I feel it also comes down to, I think, the age-old saying, like the biggest problem is between the chair and the computer itself. Like there's that psychological element. A lot of the hacks is more a bit of a social engineering, like letting the user believe that they're interacting with an interface that they think they trust, but then suddenly isn't because it's just a copy of a website, and they interact with a malicious contract. Or for example, like people get their ETH drained because they think they're doing a transaction fee while it's actually just a transaction of all their ETH in their wallet. And yeah, that's definitely security and a UX problem there. Making the apps better for a user to understand what they're doing, maybe abstracting some stuff away, but while like the technology in these apps checks for that already. And you also mentioned an important point here, that DeFi actually in the last 2 years was still functioning as it should. Like we've seen quite some centralized services like Celsius or FTX fall over, hurting a lot of people. But DeFi continued to work, and like even if there were like on-chain liquidations of users, it was working as intended. And Caddi is actually still functioning as an unbiased app, basically, because they say like, yeah, we know the reality is centralized exchanges and also DeFi, but where do you see crypto move? Will it be eventually more on-chain because like crypto will be more self-custody, or do you still see a good role for all these centralized exchanges?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In general, we kind of thought of wallets as in previous years, up until the most recent bull run, as cold storage. And that's somewhere where you can take your crypto, like, you take your Bitcoin offline and then it's air gapped. So, there's nothing that someone can do to steal it. And the easiest place to onboard was an app like Coinbase, a centralized exchange where you could pay with fiat directly onto the platform. And that's why centralized exchanges have, quite a big moat at this point. They've got the user experience. Then when a lot of the computation is done off chain, it creates a much cheaper experience for you to trade, to invest, without having the need to take care of your own custody. I think as we've seen with FTX blowing up, with all these centralized lenders, BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager, there has been a bit of a flight towards self-custody. So that's one thing in terms of just safety of your funds. I think centralized exchanges will continue to play an important role. They are, still the best place to on-ramp, still the best place to execute trades, in my opinion. And now we're seeing a lot of DeFi protocols come about, which are trying to reproduce the centralized exchange experience, but through self-custody wallets. Apps like GMX on Arbitrum offering on-chain order books. This previously wasn't done, which is why the innovation of the automated market maker was an important one. It allows you to exchange two assets in a fairly easy way. Like anyone could be a market maker, but really the flexibility of placing order books, trades on order books, and having a really nice UI to match that. That's been dominated by centralized player. I do think now there are even more use cases of dApps. If we think about DeFi, it's only about 3 years old at this point before it had any sort of adoption. But there's now DAOs. There's also NFTs. There's in-game assets. I think the use cases of actually having funds in self-custody wallets have really, really increased. And I see that as a continuing trend. It's really, I went to East Denver pretty recently, and there was a ton of cool projects, and very few of them were built around a centralized exchange or anything centralized that people had to offer. They're all using MetaMask wallets, or even the hackathon connect any wallet connect, and really get access to a different type of ecosystem, a different community, and a different application that you wouldn't otherwise have. I think in the long term, users are going to have tons of wallets, maybe even hundreds, maybe even one wallet per application. And managing that is going to be a nightmare. So we need to build the right tooling to be able to have funds on different chains. There might be, application-specific chains or even application-specific wallets. So making sure that you have all of your finances in crypto under one place is very important. And that's what we want to build for. We're not taking a bet saying centralized exchanges are going away, in the next few years. We're saying, if you want to use a centralized exchange, come to Caddi. We'll allow you to trade on Binance, Kraken, KuCoin, whatever you want. But then also, if you wanted to trade on Uniswap, if you wanted to trade on many different blockchains, you can come to us, and we'll have an aggregated view. We'll allow you to frictionlessly move funds around and manage everything from one place.
I think that's a brilliant view there about like how wallets have changed through time. They have been much more central in the user interacting with crypto in like every DeFi protocol. And one thing that actually really hit me in the last year, I think, or maybe last 2 years, was that it removes a little bit of the accounting, but also the part where as a user you have to log in. Like in every more Web2 interface, we can log in with Facebook or a Google account. But in Web3, you just need your wallet. And one of the best things about that for a protocol is that you don't really have to build a user login system, because that's already a feature of the blockchain. And I think that's what a lot of these protocols are using well right now. Like, just connect your wallet and you're logged in and you can interact with the protocol. And at first, it didn't click with me, because then I was like, yeah, they really have to log into my MetaMask and then connect. It doesn't feel that safe. But I think over time, it's like, okay, wait a second, this is how you identify me, or actually one of my alter egos if I use multiple wallets. And I think that's also a good point, where I think a user will have many wallets. It will definitely be it already is a problem to manage all these wallets. But it will be even worse in the future. So we need to find ways to interact correctly.
It's so interesting that you raise that point, where now it's so hard to go back. I'm like, oh, they're asking for my email. Like, you have to type out your email. Connect wallet. Once you get to the barrier of setting up a wallet, which I'd admit it's a bit of a pain the first time you do it, when you have no idea what's going on. Like, you want me to write down the seed phrase. Where do I store it? Okay, let's just put it on like some notes in the cloud. Is it secure at that point? Like, absolutely not. But once you onboard with that, and then now you can just connect to any dApp, you can use it frictionlessly. It's a much, much, much better experience. The thing that we haven't solved is, how do you keep your wallet safe? And there's a lot of companies which are trying to solve that now through MPC. Very, very excited about account abstraction coming about as well. I think we'll start to see more interesting wallets just from the amount of technology that's being produced in that space. But yeah, I can't go back. Obviously I have an email and I still use it, but if I can connect wallet, then I absolutely will, because it's a much more frictionless experience.
Yeah, and I think also we will come to a point where we will see the intersection of maybe your Google account and some Google wallet, or you can couple your MetaMask with a Google wallet, where it will also be a gold mine for data miners, on-chain data, behavioral data, and your website data. But it will definitely make it easier for some protocols. And then you of course have to think about your personal security or online privacy. We can have that discussion later. But I think there will be some intersections where we do that crossover between a Web 2 and Web 3, because it's still a little bit separated. And I think that's right now for the good until we figure out how they should work together. But I think eventually, to onboard a new users, you would have like wallets that are indeed like maybe not fully self-custody. They are maybe on a more centralized server, but at least the user can get easily started with something they are already familiar with, and then you can educate them from there, which I think is a good on-ramp.
It kind of exists already. There are like Web3 auth, where you can log in through Twitter, through Google, through even through MetaMask if you wanted to create a wallet that way. And then I guess there's a few competitors, Particle Network, Magic Link, which, now when I'm creating a wallet, I actually don't mind doing that, rather than keeping a seed phrase and having that book of seed phrases or whatever piece of paper you've written it on. It does make for a much more frictionless experience. And, going back to this point of, when you have hundreds of wallets, do you want to manage hundreds of seed phrases? Definitely not, right? You want some sort of wallet aggregator, and being able to link it back to your cold storage wallet, or just signing in through Google and it's protected. Maybe there are some guarantees around account abstraction for that particular application you're using it for. That would make a ton of sense, and honestly, it would improve the onboarding experience. It would improve the wallet management experience. A good 10x from here.
Absolutely. And it would actually mimic in a way what we do with bank accounts, and maybe just some cash in your wallet, or some credit cards, whether it's prepaid. Then you also already are separating funds for specific use cases. And just it comes down to education, I think, or interfaces that say to the user, like, hey, you can build an account here, or a suite of wallets here. And we want you to think about, like, this should be your most secure wallet, and you don't want to interact with a lot of this. like all of DeFi with this, but this is your hot wallet, and if you interact with DeFi, use this one, for example, or with if you want to use it with games, like take this one, which you can also tailor the interfaces to a user is using. So that brings us, I think, to the question, because you are right now an extension of a wallet. Like, how does this view of having multiple wallets and being that intersection between centralized and decentralized, how does that impact the development you do currently with Caddi or in the future?
Yeah. I mean, the crypto space moves so fast, right? Whatever is the hot thing today, tomorrow it'll be, standard, or it'll be old news. So, our core principles are what guides us, and we really think about what crypto users want. So we're a caddy, which, like a golf caddy, it helps you out. It just makes your life a lot easier, I guess, on the golf course, but in this case, in crypto. What we want to do is just make every transaction and crypto interaction simpler, cheaper, and safer. It's really hard to say what the product will look like in 5 years' time, because we don't know what the space is going to look like in 5 years' time. I had this prediction of hundreds of wallets. We'll see how that plays out. It could be like that. It might be something different. But we really want to grow with the space and own the crypto experience. We're building for what's here now, but we're also using the extension as a bit of a go-to-market, because we've noticed that there are market inefficiencies that we can capture and give back to the user. The next thing to tackle is definitely gas. People are really worried about, how much they're spending on every transaction, which, to be honest, really racks up. I looked at a few sites which can tell you how much you spent on gas, and if you told me when I first got into crypto you'd spend that much on just transaction fees, I would have probably not considered joining. But obviously there's a lot of opportunities which have come along with that as well. But we do want to own that crypto experience to provide the most frictionless experience, with giving people confidence when they transact, whether they connect a wallet to a new website and they're just not sure of what they're doing, whether they're executing a trade and they're wondering, okay, would it be better to be trading from a different platform right now? We want to make sure that that's all taken care of under the hood, and they can just worry about that action. We want to reduce the friction, make it seamless, and also make sure that they're confident that they have the right security measures in place. So we really see this extension component as being our go-to-market. Let's capture users, let's save them money, let's keep them protected. In the long run, we do want to be a more complete service. And that means kind of producing our own services, which are novel, such as our own DApp. There's a lot of different things you can do in DeFi, but in crypto and beyond, you can now swap, obviously, you can bridge, you can stake, you can participate in DAO governance by NFTs, making sure each and every action that you take is optimal and you have the right information with you. It is really important as well. So I think, it's very hard to predict what the space looks like a few years from now. 3 years, we didn't even have NFTs or DeFi. So we just want to build for that use case for that user and make their life in crypto better.
Yeah, and I think that's a good approach. I think I realized yesterday that most of this DeFi didn't even exist 3 years back. And then we were figuring out what Uniswap actually was and how we were trading those coins on there, figuring out how that would connect with MetaMask. And now we have already plenty of wallets alternatives. We have competitors, and not only competitors, we have aggregators on top of these decentralized exchanges. So it's not that it's just another iteration. It's like 3 iterations after that. Which I think, coming back to your transaction fee optimization, that's a function that's been always relevant, but made me realize you naming that is actually something that hasn't been changed in the last 3 years. We see some wallets giving you 3 options, do you want to be fast, or you want to be cheaper but wait 1 minute. Well, that's an optimization, but there's definitely more possible, especially if there's maybe a willing buyer on the other side. You can just lock that in and basically do an OTC deal at the moment when gas fees are the lowest, and that might actually also be a good option here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players who are innovating in that space, kind of like matching P2P orders. You can think of CowSwap, but also 1inch with their new fusion mode. It gives you the option to wait and see if there's a willing buyer for whatever trade that you out there. And that can offer a ton of benefits, like gas savings in terms of not having to route towards the AMM, just matching them P2P. There's no way that can be front run, as it's kind of not in a public pool. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of looking at solutions like that, and saying, okay, for our users, what choices do they want? Right now, it's like, just really figuring out that user experience, the pain point they're suffering from. I think CowSwap has a decent amount of adoption. 1inch fusion mode is a bit experimental right now. I've had a few users who said, oh, it's kind of weird that they've changed the transaction types. I don't know if I like it, but it is an interesting space to explore. And I definitely think that Caddi is very relevant in trying to solve that as well.
Yeah, and it takes some time for users to break those habits. Like, I absolutely love the CowSwap product, but still, like, the problem also there is that it's not on every chain. So that's something the team, of course, has to build, but also users have to latch on to. Like, if there are more users, the team, of course, is more incentivized to build it for another chain. But yes, those are solutions that come from pain points, like people being sandwich attacked, seeing the negative parts of MEV, but also, you could remove fees, which I think, 1inch is the interface for that also shows that quite well. Although their matching could be improved, but definitely we'll see that in the coming months, probably, as they keep building. I want to ask you a little bit more about, like, if you're opinionated where the space goes, because we never know really where crypto is going and what the next iteration will be. But if you would talk more from what you know now, and you maybe see some other builders building great tools, where do you see this space develop, and maybe what's the role for Caddi in there?
Yeah. Well, there's a ton of really exciting things going on in the space. I mean, there always is, but it seems like we're pretty much at the frontier of account abstraction right now, where we haven't really seen use cases take off. So yeah, I guess in the most recent conference I went to, ETH Denver, the hot topics, well, aside from AI, but we won't talk about that one. There's account abstraction, zero knowledge. I do think privacy right now, everything is just public by default. That has to be one of the most important topics to solve before we get adoption. For example, like when you go to the grocery store, you're paying for something, like you don't want everyone to know what you bought. And, really, you can see that transaction detail, how much you paid for it. And it's kind of linked to an identity that might not be your full, KYC identity at this point as well. But having private transactions is very important. It's kind of how cash has always worked. It just makes a ton of sense, because you don't want to put everything out there into what you're doing. Like, in some cases, it can be useful to prove that you've been a member of a DAO, you've been an early adopter of a product, you've used something in the past, and that's a great accolade. We shouldn't prevent that. But using stuff like zero knowledge technology to say, okay, I executed a transaction without doxing which wallet address of a particular protocol that you wanted to prove, can give you that. And I do think that space is expanding. I don't know whether we're there yet, because it is quite new technology, but that has to happen. And I think, Caddi will position ourselves to take advantage of that. Definitely, provide that service to our users for people who wanted to, have some privacy on transactions. That's super important. Kind of going back to abstracted wallets, we are thinking about use cases around this. For example, just to give you an idea of the way we're thinking, for one transaction, some users are scared to connect their wallet. Say they're minting an NFT off a drop and they're not quite sure if the founder is legitimate, if they're on a phishing website, it could be something completely new. And if we can create an abstracted wallet on the fly for one transaction, for example, you're just minting this NFT, but you send ETH the amount of ETH that you need exactly for minting that NFT, then the only funds that are at risk are not of your main wallet. Your MetaMask, your hot wallet stays intact. We have the thought of hot wallets being kind of burner wallets, but that's not true because they get bloated. Hacks like what happened to Kevin Rose can happen, where you lose a significant portion of your net worth just from executing an incorrect transaction. And using this abstracted wallet, we could potentially even have an auto withdrawal feature, so that after 24 hours or whatever we program it to, or the user can specify, you can now withdraw that into cold storage. You can withdraw that into your hot wallet, or do anything else that you can even leave it there. But I think building that kind of functionality into Caddi is going to provide added layers of security, of benefits, and a ton of cool use cases that we can build around it. I'm just pretty excited. There were definitely hackathon projects rather than full applications being built around this. But EIP 4337, the token standard for account abstraction, to me that's really exciting. We also need to kind of look at the space as a whole. There's more layer ones popping up. I mean, I guess as they always are, which is kind of a fragmenting force. But when they offer faster transactions, when they offer more robust kind of architecture, I think that's actually a really interesting place to explore. So as Caddi, we want to expand to wherever there are retail traders, wherever there's people transacting. That's the goal. I do think looking at the different ecosystems like Cosmos is very exciting. Sui as well. Kind of just supporting transactions there as well. Also layer twos. So we're currently live on Ethereum and Polygon. We should have Arbitrum out by the time you're hearing this podcast, probably, and expanding to other layer twos. I actually think the user experience of layer twos is very exciting, and kind of building for wherever the traders are going, wherever the liquidity is very important. I also think that interactions with blockchains from dApps and wallets themselves need to improve. And that's mostly talking about RPCs. Right now, when the Arbitrum airdrop happened, there was a ton of confusion. Like I remember trying to claim this airdrop, and my RPC wasn't working. I had to go to the chain list, choose the correct RPC, execute Ethereum transactions on things that I'd never even experienced before. And we actually just need kind of like a more robust RPC architecture to handle things like big events. So that was an airdrop, and sure, people claiming money that they otherwise wouldn't have. But there could be, a big liquidation where people are trying to get out of positions, and that can happen in the same way. So we need to make sure that is completely catered for, that those kind of user experience speed bumps aren't in the way. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to build a more robust financial system here, and it doesn't really work in the edge cases if they can collapse. Obviously, kind of like seeing, it wasn't even too long ago, it was about just over a month ago, USDC depegged. There's definitely a lot of kind of stablecoin worries that people have, as well as regulation coming in as well. So I think centralized exchanges, they're going to get more regulated. That's not a bad thing, as we've seen. Whether that's kind of proof of assets and proof of liabilities, as well as just kind of better financial restrictions around them, is important. But also kind of leaving DeFi to be a little bit more self-regulating. We'll have to see how that space does pan out, because there's a lot of allegations, kind of court cases going on at the moment. And then also kind of going back to this wallet point, where people aren't in control of their funds really. They have a lot of different wallets. They have no oversight on what's happening. Just building better tooling to access the data, present it, even have it more searchable. I think I'm very excited, but my background's slightly in data as well. Now blockchain data is so accessible. There's great dashboards like Dune, but just being able to query anything that you want, and say, okay, I want to track the wallets that are doing X amount of volume on a particular chain, or are holders of this token or NFT or anything else. I do think that's going to really open up the space to more developers coming in, and making sure that we build some really cool tools around it. For Caddi, we want to be the retail companion. So whether that means news feeds in the future, building abstracted wallets, building our own RPC, portfolio tracking, NFT integrations, we're all for it. But we'll have to talk to our users and figure out what the highest value thing to build is.
That's a extensive list, which I think agree on all points. I like to use the on-chain data tools myself. There are a few layers of abstractions that still can be made to make the data more accessible. We see some no-code tools coming up. some natural language models. I think June actually incorporated a feature where you can ask a tool to explain the query, which is a great feature. If they roll that out, there is like, basically the blockchain is a huge database, and the question is like, how do you query that correctly, and how do you make the data accessible to a user? And I think there's a lot of projects actually trying to solve that now, and that's I think that will be super important, both for the user but also for projects using that data to create a better user experience. And then on the topic of the RPCs, I think I like that you mentioned that, because that's definitely a problem a lot of users don't understand. And that was absolutely clear when the Arbitrum airdrop happened. A lot of people didn't even knew how to like switch their RPCs. So if you build a wallet that does the RPC switching, like with multiple RPCs, call me. that will solve a lot of users some headaches.
You need like the 1 inch of RPCs, so I could just choose the one that's live, or even choose it based on the pricing that they could get for gas. There's MEV distribution, redistribution. You could even use the Caddi optimal order routing, which would be pretty interesting to explore through an RPC, or delayed transactions optimizing for gas. There's a ton of innovations, and I think it's quite an interesting space to explore this time.
Absolutely. And I think we, some members of DayasXDAO have, for example, invested in Omnia, who try to work with mixnets and make these RPCs more private, but also they have some balancer that tries to optimize the routing for that through like a single RPC endpoint. That's already a great step in that direction, but I think that's what happens in crypto. Like, users get hurt or run into a problem because the network is overloaded, or like everybody's trying to do the same action, or something gets rocked, and then we see it as a problem, and then we can make another iteration in the tool set we use. So it's great that we realized that during the Arbitrum airdrop. I think one of the final questions then, more in the distant future, is what's on the roadmap for Caddi. While we're recording this, Caddi is still like invite only, but you told me you're opening that up. So that's one question I want to ask you, like, how can a user sign up when this podcast is released?
So currently, I think by the time this podcast is out, we should be off the wait list. If you go to caddi.fi, caddi.fi, then you should be able to onboard, download the extension, install it. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to me as well. In terms of the roadmap, right now, we're making sure that it's super robust. It works for every use case that you're trading on, all the DEXs you've integrated with, the centralized exchanges as well. We'll be releasing on Firefox at some point. So these are kind of like shorter term things, and also expanding to more chains. So we want to provide the most frictionless retail crypto experience that there is. And then also, what's next is, now we can assume that users, when they're doing optimal routing, they're routing from one wallet to the same wallet, or from one wallet to an exchange. But a user's portfolio is usually constructed of many different wallets on different chains and different exchanges as well. So we're working on an optimal order routing framework, which will take that into account and now find the best liquidity across all of these places. So very excited to be working on that. I think that's going to be shipping. Can't put an exact date on it, but the goal is to kind of scale, to onboard users, and then we'll start moving from there.
Awesome. In the meantime, I'll keep the current version of Caddi in my browser wallet, and see it pop up every time I'll try to trade some shit coins. We'll be reminding myself that I could use a better interface, or just let let Caddi handle that. So thank you for building, and keep building, because it's a great UX improvement to what we already have. Is there any final thought or message you still want to get out to the listener about crypto space, about the projects you're working on, about yourself, maybe some ideologic viewpoints?
Yeah, I mean, well, crypto is still here, is what I'm going to say. We haven't gone away. There might be a lot of attention, which is on other exciting technology at the moment. But from what I've seen, the builders in the space are so committed that it seems like an inevitability that crypto will continue to produce awesome technology. I'm so excited about what we're building, kind of sitting at the very interface layer, but it relies a lot on all this technology under the hood, the infrastructure, the blockchains themselves, the numerous different dApps we integrate, and that kind of community is so strong even throughout the bear market. So it's just been a pleasure to be part of it. We're gonna keep building. We'll be here. Just excited for what comes next.
Awesome. That's a great final message. Thank you, Jaimin, for coming on our podcast. I will make sure to drop all the links for our listeners to your Twitter profile, to the Caddi profile, to the Caddi extension, so they can get onboarded. Thank you again for coming on, and see you again at another Days Exile podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Love what you guys do in the space. Thank you, Aperture.
Thanks for tuning in to the Deus Ex DAO podcast, a place where some of the most progressive and innovative builders, thought leaders, and traders in the crypto space come together to discuss all areas of the crypto industry. Whether you're into DeFi, Layer 1s, Layer 2s, NFTs, or anything in between, we've got you covered. And as a reminder, nothing said on this podcast should be construed as financial advice or as a solicitation to buy or sell any digital asset or security. The comments, views, and opinions expressed by the hosts or guests on the podcast are their own. As always, you'll need to do your own research.